Welcome to Weapons of Mass Discussion. We're going to start out with a band today that is probably my greatest influence as far as music goes, and that would be the Beastie Boys. Um, I've been a fan since day one, since 1986 when License to Ill dropped, and I got that album, and like I know I say this all the time, but it was legitimately like a life changing event. It's the album that got me into hip hop. It's the album that got me into rock too, with the guitar and the sampling that they did. So, there's probably no greater influence on anything I've done than the Beastie Boys. Um, this great band, Licensed to Ill in '86. Then on their second album, they got in a beef with Def Jam and they moved to California and they started working with the Dust Brothers, and who had previously only done Young MC and Tone Loc. So in '89, they put out the album The Dust Brothers. Paul's Boutique contains like over 300 different samples. They called it the Sgt. Pepper's of hip hop. Came out at Capitol. It was supposed to change the game for Capitol. It was supposed to be like a multi-million-dollar seller, but it didn't live up to the sales figures of License to Ill. Therefore, it was deemed a failure. Which, if you've heard the album musically, it's definitely not a failure. It's one of the best uses of samples from any artist ever. And it's just sick what they got away with. They sampled the Beatles. They didn't get sued. They got really ballsy with this thing, but it's really like a sonic patchwork they got going on. I'm gonna have to go straight to Check Your Head. That came out in '92. Blew up the game. This is the first one that came out where they were playing instruments, since they were a punk band back in the when they came out back in the mid '80s. So it's got a lot of funky jams, them playing intermixed with the samples and the hip hop, and it's like this funk hip hop live hybrid thing that they did. They had Money Mark on keyboards, and they had Eric Bobo on percussion, so they expanded the lineup, and then of course Mike D on drums, MCA on bass, and Adam Yout Ed Rock on guitar, in addition to the keyboards and the percussion. So, landmark album. Couple years later, they came out with Ill Communication. A lot of Sure Shot. It was a big album for them, and they kind of continued on the Check Your Head vibe with Ill Communication. I actually consider them companion albums, really, because they used a lot of the same formulas, but it was still really influential. They had Q-Tip was on there with them. So yeah, I mean, just this is when they were super hot. They were the face of the alternative skate culture, punk culture at the time, hip hop culture. They were cross genred in on a lot of different stuff. So next up, they came out with Hello Nasty, which I have on CD, '98. Intergalactic, most of y'all know that. They did a song with Lee Scratch Perry on there. Just amazing freaking album. On this one, they toned back the live playing a little bit. There's a little bit less live, a little bit more hip hop. So it's almost like a back to the basics kind of thing. But they were still hype at the time. It was their last album of the '90s. Then they came out with To the Five Boroughs. Their next album, which, if I'm going chronologically through the whole catalog, is probably their weakest album. But when you have a band like the Beastie Boys, even their weakest album, is still like a million times better than anything else that had came out like at the time. And Check It Out was the big single off that. And then they did Hot Sauce Committee Volume 2. So they were supposed to release 2 volumes of this. Something happened with Volume 1, unbeknownst to us, the reasons, but they came out with just Volume 2. This was the last album that they released with the original lineup because MCA passed away, unfortunately, after this album came out. They did a bunch of compilation and a bunch of EPs. I'm probably not going to get to all of them, but I do have the In Sound from Way Out, which was all the instrumentals off their Check Your Head, No Communication, all put together on one. So it's all instrumental album. Pretty good. I got Sounds of Science. That's the anthology 2 CD set that has like their extended greatest hits. And then a lot of people don't know that they were originally a punk band. So when they started Grand Royal, they put out Some Old Bullshit, which is an extension of, or not extension of, I'm sorry, it was the original recordings from their punk band before they got signed to Def Jam in '86. And then they also did this little EP here in '95. It's just some hardcore stuff, and they can do it all. They can do hardcore, they can do hip hop, they can do punk rock, they can do funk, jazz. I mean, the band is an unstoppable force, and that is why I just wanted to give you a little love letter to one of my favorite bands of all time, Beastie Boys. If you like this, click, subscribe, ring the bell, leave some comments, help me get this going. But that was the Beastie Boys, Weapons of Mass Discussion. This is Zach Dawson signing off.